The Australian government has pushed some really stupid and actually sometimes scary policies before, but this one might take the cake for the worst. Once you translate all the legal wording into normal English, what you're really looking at is the government literally trying to give itself more power over you. And then they say it's all about security. We make fun of North Korea for being this totalitarian government, while our government is actively trying to turn into one. Now, if you don't know anything about this bill and how it might affect you, stick around because we're going to go through all of that in this video. If you're new here, I'm Michael. My goal is to one day become Prime Minister and help build a better Australia. And this channel is really just part of that journey. So if you want to help me get there, please subscribe to the channel. Before we get into the bill, I just wanted to talk about the ASIO. Now, the ASIO is the Australian Security Intelligence Office or organization, and it's basically the CIA of Australia. So what they do is gain intel and information about certain terrorists in the country and people who are trying to organize crimes that could danger or inflict pain on other people, essentially. So their primary job is really good because we need an intelligence organization to take care of us with these people who are trying to commit huge, terrible crimes. The problem is that this bill is turning emergency powers that they would need as a last resort into the main resort. And that's what we're going to talk about. So here is the bill. It's the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation Amendment Bill number 2 of 2025. So it's had some changes. But this bill has been pushed through the House of Reps, being agreed upon by the Liberals and the Labor, and it's now in the hands of the Senate to decide if we need this. Okay? So what does this bill let them do? The main problems of the bill can be summed up super simply in this post here, right? Basically, what it does is, number one, when you get questioned, you are forced to answer those questions. You cannot remain silent, which, as we all know, is a certain right that we have when we are detained by the police. So if you refuse to answer, you can be jailed. And I think the jail time is up to 10 years if you remain silent. Now, this isn't done through the normal legal system. There are no judges and there are no courts. And that is what makes it so dangerous. It's done through the Attorney General, who provides the ASIO with a questioning warrant, which allows them to detain any person that they see fit and question them about what they know about whatever they're trying to search for. Now, the other extremely scary and powerful thing about this is the scope at which the ASIO is looking for. Before, they would target terrorism and espionage. That was the main focus of this intelligence organization. So anybody who is associated with or connected to terrorists in Australia would obviously be targeted by this organization. But what this bill is also trying to do is expand the scope at which they're allowed to look for. So this includes sabotage, promotion of communal violence, attacks on defense systems, and border threats. Now, unfortunately, they don't specify what exactly a promotion of communal violence is, or attacks on the defense system. They just don't specify that. These are the words that they use in the bill. And that lack of definition is what makes this bill so scary. The next thing is the restricted lawyer access. Now, when you're pulled in for interrogation, you're not allowed to remain silent, and you're not allowed to tell anyone that you've been detained. So you basically sign an invisible NDA, and if you do tell someone, then you may face imprisonment, which is great. Now, this post on Twitter with the image that I showed you, this guy's named Shane, and he says, as someone who has operated within Australia's intelligence community for over 20 years, I can say with authority that Australia is sleepwalking into a surveillance state. Now, obviously, he's referring to this bill that gives them a lot of power permanently, which is not what we want. And a lot of people on Twitter are talking about this bill, and one such person is this man named Alex Antic, who is a senator in the government. And this is what he had to say.
Well, during the next parliamentary sitting period in a few weeks' time, the Senate's going to vote on the so-called ASIO Amendment number 2 bill, and what's being proposed should concern every Australian who values freedom under the law. The bill introduces significant changes to ASIO's compulsory questioning powers that were never meant to be permanent. And in fact, they were introduced as temporary measures with a clear sunset clause. Now, that clause has already been extended a number of times, but it's set to expire in March 2027. And instead of respecting that original intent, this bill seeks to remove that safeguard entirely, making these extraordinary powers ongoing forever and ever. Now, in addition to this, there are going to be new powers introduced, which include expanding the scope of adult questioning warrants, introducing new disqualifying criteria, and introducing new requirements for compulsory questioning in circumstances where a person has been charged or where such a charge is just imminent. Now, powers like these are not ordinary. They allow the state to compel individuals to answer questions under threat of penalty, and that's a serious, serious intrusion into personal liberty. The bill also expands the scope of questioning warrants for adults and continues to allow compulsory questioning of minors, and that raises serious questions, particularly when it appears to contradict earlier positions taken by the intelligence agencies. There are also ongoing issues with oversight, and the process for issuing these warrants still lacks proper judicial scrutiny. And if we're looking at this, we're seeing serious, troubling restrictions placed on other areas like legal representation. Lawyers, in fact, can be removed, and there are limits on what they can even be told. Now, that should ring alarm bells. Access to legal counsel is a fundamental right in any free society, and weakening that right, even in the name of national security, is something that has got to be approached with extreme caution.
You can see how Alex has eloquently put it. The bill is not great. It just extends a bunch of powers that were going to expire soon in March of next year, but it just extends it so it's permanent. The last bad thing about the bill is that it also extends to minors. Yes, they're allowed to bring in for questioning anyone down to the age of 14 for questioning. Again, remember, they're not allowed to remain silent, they're not allowed to have any legal representation, and they're not allowed to tell anyone that they've been detained. Imagine a 14-year-old having to go through that. They can't call their parents, they can't have anybody support them, and they have to answer the questions, otherwise they will be detained and locked up. This is the type of Australia that we're heading towards. And this is not the type of Australia that I support. Now, this person also spoke about the ASIO bill, and they sum it up extremely well. It is now a permanent law giving the ASIO police state-style powers over everyday Australian citizens. And the bill removed something what's called a sunset clause, which basically turns these powers into a permanent asset for the ASIO to use. And they said this as well. This is not about catching terrorists anymore. This is about giving intelligence agency the power to secretly drag any Australian in for interrogation without suspecting you of any crime. And the craziest part, 106 politicians just voted to hand the ASIO these powers. So it has been successfully pushed through the House of Reps, meaning that the majority of Labor, Liberal, the Nationals, and the crossbench agreed that this bill was good to do. Only 8 politicians had the courage to vote no. This is how the freedom of Australians slowly disappears. The terrible thing about losing freedom is that it doesn't happen overnight. It slowly gets chipped away year after year, and we've seen this with the bills. The Australian government continues to release these small bills that just implicit a little bit less freedom each time, until eventually Australia turns into a totalitarian government. Now, back in 2015, the government released the data retention laws that forced telecommunication countries to provide metadata about Australians for 2 years. They also released an Encryption and Assistance Access Act in 2018 that let government agencies pressure tech companies to gain access to encrypted communications. So basically allowing the government to see chats that you've had with your friends, your family, and other people. They've also released various identity matching policies that have forced these tech companies to provide more information about you so that they can make it easier for government agencies to identify and share facial data about you and I. And then obviously we saw last year they released the social media bill that restricted social media from anybody under the age of 16. And the way to verify your age was through facial scanning, identity upload. which is obviously hinders on your right of freedom, which is not great. Yeah, the problem is no one's talking about it. Where are the headlines about the ASIO bill in the news? Or why haven't any of the politicians brought this up with the members of their electorate? It's because they're trying to sweep this under the rug and give the powers without letting anybody know, and then we all suffer in the future. So what can you do? The first thing you can do is stay educated. The second thing is that the bill has not been pushed yet. The bill has been moved to the Senate, and the Senate needs to vote in the next coming weeks whether to push this bill or not. And you know what we can do? We can email the senators to stop them from pushing this bill, to say that we do not agree with this and we would like our right of freedom to remain intact. So what I would recommend is finding the email to your Senate. I'm going to share a Google spreadsheet with a list of all the senators' emails and their phone numbers so that you can find the senator that relates to your state. And I want you to send them an email telling them that you disagree with this bill and that you want them to decline it. I also want you to call the senator's office and tell them that we do not support this bill. If we all work together and we email and call these senators to stop, they won't be able to push it, and we will retain our freedom. The third thing we can do is tell other people about this. We should not remain silent. Everybody should know about the bills that the government is pushing, okay? Because again, it affects all of us. So with that being said, that's the end of this video. I hope you learned something new. Now you can see why this bill is not very good and why we should all work together to get rid of the bill. Take care, guys.